Emmanuel Macron has announced he will hold talks with Angela Merkel as the deadline looms for a Brexit trade deal to be completed. As the Brexit trade talks reach a critical stage, French president suggested he would speak with his German counterpart imminently. Speaking at a press conference, Mr. Macron refused to speculate what the pair will be discussing when they speak. The phone call is expected to take place later today, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also set for their own showdown talks. France and Germany are considered key decision-makers in the Brexit process and have recently been at odds over what concessions EU negotiator Michel Barnier should be allowed to offer Britain. The French government has repeatedly warned it will veto any trade deal unless Britain agrees compromise terms. Mr. Barnier last week sparked disarray when he tabled a series of 11th-hour proposals to appease Brexit hardliner Mr. Macron. The French president has insisted the EU should be ready to walk away from the talks because a no deal would be better than a bad deal for the bloc. Whereas Berlin is far more focused on using concessions on fishing and the so-called level playing field to secure a deal. Mrs. Merkel wants an agreement to cement her legacy before she leaves office next year. Meanwhile, Mr. Barnier has warned Brussels figures Brexit talks will not continue beyond Wednesday if there is no agreement. The Brussels diplomat this morning told MEPs that he believes an agreement must be reached within 48 hours. Mr. Barnier said there are 48 hours for a deal to be made, according to one insider familiar with the discussions. In a separate briefing, he told EU 27 ambassadors this morning that the talks are still deadlocked on the issues of post-Brexit fishing rights, the so-called level playing field and policing the final agreement. Downing Street has raised the prospect of a no-deal Brexit unless Mr. Barnier is allowed to offer more concessions by hardline EU states. Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Macron will play a critical role in deciding whether any last-minute deal is acceptable to the bloc, an EU diplomat said. EU-UK negotiations have entered the endgame, time is running out quickly. Despite intensive negotiations until late last night, the gaps on level playing field, governance and fisheries are still not bridged. The outcome is still uncertain, it can still go both ways. The EU is ready to go the extra mile to agree on a fair, sustainable and balanced deal for citizens in the EU and UK. It is for the UK to choose between such a positive outcome or a no-deal outcome.